Connected to iPhone. iPhone disconnected. Ready to pair.
There's nothing more certain than taxes and death, but in the future, maybe not the latter.
Connected to iPhone.
We discussed concepts like life extension before, and last week we discussed mind augmentation. Most people have at least a passing familiarity with the notion that you might be able to back up or upload your mind to a computer and in that way live forever, or pretty close to it. In the Civilizations at the End of Time series, we've discussed the ways a civilization might outlast the very stars themselves, and indeed potentially flourish and prosper on a scale that would make the entire stellar phase of the universe seem like a brief prelude. In that regard, we are barely into the first sentence of that prelude. Humanity has existed for only an eye blink of time compared to the universe as a whole, and is still quite young. We are about 1% of 1% of the way through the period of time in which stars will form and die, and the period of time in which humanity has been around is only about 1% of 1% of that. Recorded human history is even shorter, just 1% of the time humanity has been around, while the individual human lifespan is about 1% of that. Only about 100 generations have passed since the Roman Empire was at its peak, and the dawn of recorded history lies only about as far again back from then. For most of that time, people typically did not die of old age, and even what folks meant by old age included a lot of circumstances we no longer view as natural causes of a long life. At the age of 37, I have already outlived the supermajority of all humans who have ever lived. Yet, barring unexpected illness or accident, I should have just as much time left to me. When we start talking about human lifespan extension, people often recoil from the idea as rather fantastic. But it is worth remembering that many of the things that used to kill people regularly in the past have been outright eliminated or reduced to being exceptionally rare. Those people living when such causes were normal, indeed more likely than dying of old age, might have considered their elimination rather fantastic too. We are just getting to the point where technology is hinting at ways to extend someone's life enormously, potentially without any limits, so contemplation of this topic tends to fall into two chief attitudes. The first is disbelief, while the second is total acceptance. Immortality is possible, and perhaps even folks alive nowadays might enjoy it, not simply folks living in some distant future. This is our topic for today, because we need to contemplate some serious impediments to extremely long life that come into play once simple aging is no longer an ultimate expiration date on your existence. Over a long enough period of time, you are likely to have some sort of accident kill you, or to be murdered. Even if your odds were only 1 in a million every year, you'd have a 50-50 chance of dying in the next 700,000 years, and a less than 1% chance to make it to 5 million. Now, most folks would shrug at that. That's a lifespan on a timeline as long as humanity has been around. More than enough. But it is important to keep in mind you need to do way better on your survival odds if you want to be seeing the end of the world. Typically, folks would suggest you probably want to either get a digital backup of your mind or go entirely digital yourself. Now, it's kind of debatable if you, yourself, can actually go digital, or if you are really just making a copy of yourself. And that's an important distinction, since if you don't view that copy as you, you might prefer just to have a copy that can go live if you die. Many folks debate whether or not such a copy is you. But whether or not it is, it's not something you can really prove or disprove. Regardless, what matters is whether or not you think it is. But even that doesn't necessarily mean you won't get backed up if the option is easily available, since a person has reason to want a copy of themselves for more than personal continuity. Putting it bluntly, most of us have stuff we are willing to die for, friends, family, causes, etc. But we also have stuff we are willing to live for, or in this case, be resurrected for. Most of us have people or projects we would not want to see ourselves absent from. I would like to know this channel would go on if I fell over dead tomorrow, and the most obvious successor to operate it is me. Nobody's going to finish writing that novel you've been working on or tend that garden you spent years improving. Not the way you would. Most of us have something like this we deeply care about. And that's not even including our friends and family, let alone our kids. This isn't some cliche sci-fi horror novel either. That copy of you isn't going to go home to your spouse and little ones and turn demonic. It is you. It isn't an it. It might be on a TV monitor for a while, or in some sophisticated android till a body is grown or regrown. Barring murder, in a civilization that can back up memories, odds are only massive brain damage that shreds almost everything will keep you dead. But it would be nice if the tiny little robots repairing your neural connections had a backup copy to look at as a blueprint. I've heard a lot of folks suggest they'd be freaked out by a copy of a dead family member, and that's an entirely legitimate response, but that's because we're not used to it. We are very good at believing what we want to be true, and by default we suspect such a thing only because it's too good to be true, and because we've seen a lot of horror movies about bringing back the dead and it going all wrong. We've got a lot more reasons to want to believe it's really them or close enough, both from a personal desire and a strictly scientific perspective. So I'd rather imagine most folks will increasingly tilt to regard them as a true copy, or even just the original who was away for a bit in the hospital. So there's a lot of reasons to have such a backup around, and not many reasons not to. Lots of potential problems too. Fortunately, one that isn't too big a problem is storage space. While the human mind is still a more potent processor than our best supercomputers, even if that gap is almost closed, human memory storage is estimated to be in the area of 10 terabytes to perhaps 10 petabytes, and you can buy 10 terabyte hard drives these days. A modest gain in hard drive capacity and cost will permit affordable storage of data equal to even that higher-end estimate of human memory. Right now, you could buy the lower-end value for a few $100, and the higher-end for around $250,000. We never want to fall into the trap of thinking that Moore's law and its parallels for other aspects of computing like memory is an actual law. There are no guarantees we will get computers even 1 penny cheaper per unit of memory or processors than we have right now. But I think we can assume that by the time we have brain scanning technology, we will have at least another order of magnitude or two knocked off the price per byte of memory. Such being the case, the actual storage cost for a copy of a human mind should be affordable even if it is that higher-end 10 petabyte value, and of course 10 terabytes already is. What this means is that we have every good reason to believe we could store a human mind on something smaller than a human brain, and a good deal cheaper than most annual life insurance premiums. A good analogy perhaps too, since a backup is essentially a type of life insurance. You get those to take care of your loved ones after you're gone. A backup of you does the job better. But it also means you can probably have a ton of backups, especially if memory gets a lot cheaper. Most likely the cost bottleneck would be all about the transmissions themselves, and of course the scanning equipment. In a realistic scenario, your default 22nd century individual, who is a little bit of a cyborg, probably has a mind-machine interface that can double as a brain scanner. Let's use a specific case. We'll say Steve from Austin, Texas. Steve has a neural lace woven around in his brain, and scanners in his skull, and little nanomachines that help to monitor and repair his brain. They tend to do most of their work at night, and he doesn't use his bandwidth much then, so they assemble a snapshot of his brain and transmit it to a hard drive implanted in his leg bone with a fiber optic cable running down to it. That's his first backup, though really there's already one in his head. but it is ever shifting and not much of a backup, since it would likely be damaged by whatever damaged his brain. Steve's pretty tough, and those little nanobots could probably repair his brain on their own if he got stabbed in the skull, probably without even having to check that backup black box in his leg. He's also not really worried about losing a day's worth of memory, so he only updates his backup at night once a day. But he is transmitting all the time. Like most people, he has a dead man switch constantly monitoring his life signs and recording sound and video near him for his secure storage. That will be transmitted to a security company and then the police if anything goes wrong. He can always watch those recordings if he loses that last day of memory too. Whatever amount of bandwidth you might need for transmitting a backup is way more than a few megabytes of video, audio, and biometric data. Of course, when Steve sends his backup daily to a local data hub or warehouse, he doesn't send a whole copy of his brain. Even if that is only 10 terabytes, that's still a lot of data to send down the wire or wirelessly. He's probably just transmitting a comparison of his current mind with his last copy and filing those changes, all the new neuron connections and changes in potential and such. Now, Steve is a bit paranoid, so from the data hub, the data gets sent to 2 different companies, each of which keeps its own redundant backups too. If you are in the brain copying business, you want to make sure you've got a reputation for having giant armored vaults with backups and the kind of security that makes Fort Knox look like a convenience store. He's got 2 backups against those companies failing. It's like with getting yourself frozen. Folks ask what you should invest your money in to make sure you still have some when you get thawed out. To which the answer is, the company that froze you. If they are successfully thawing people out, their stock is probably looking pretty hot. And if their stock isn't too hot, you probably ain't staying too cold. So the status of your investments is the last thing on your mind, or what's left of it. Multiple redundancies, prior copies that haven't been updated for a while, just in case someone has been tampering with your uploads, or even hijacked your implants to send static or gibberish so they could kill you later when all those stored copies are gibberish too. Encryptions on those transmissions, regular checks with technicians to make sure all is well. This makes somebody very hard to kill for keeps. They can still get your body, of course. One immediate application of this technology is that you can copy your mind into an android and go shoot someone with a death ray that disintegrates them. That would probably be a pretty common form of interplanetary tourism too, since it's faster and probably cheaper to get your brain scanned over to an android on another planet for a while. You might get some interesting companies that provided anonymous brain scan storage or don't ask, don't tell android rental, though I think you could still track them. But if you've got that tech, you also have off-planet storage too. Just having androids sophisticated enough to handle a human brain copied into them grants you way easier off-planet construction abilities. But that's not too relevant, since all the tech needed for such things allows really good automation and self-replication anyway. So Steve's other copies are off at the Hyperion Data Repository on Titan, and with a small city-state in the asteroid belt that is the Swiss bank of the brain biz. Those only get copied once a week, but they keep 100 prior versions before copying over, and Steve assumes he only needs those if either Earth is getting blown up or someone has engaged in an elaborate murder conspiracy against him. At least that's what Steve's wife Jamie thinks. Steve is pretty paranoid, so he actually has a 3rd copy she doesn't know about that he only transmits once a month and never from home. After all, no encryption is ever safe from someone with a password or access to the account a password reset goes to. Steve heard of a man killed by his wife after they had a very bad argument, where she didn't want him dead, just wanted his memory of the argument erased. Steve's fairly normal as folks go, in terms of paranoia and backups. He's not a secret agent or a test pilot or something dangerous that might get his body incinerated. But he's pretty hard to kill, and indeed probably a lot less likely to die, permanently, than 1 in a million per year. It can pretty much only happen to him if he is murdered, and we already have a fair few places where the murder rate is nearly that low. As we said, at those odds, your half-life was about 700,000 years, so he might live quite a long time, with even lower odds. This is even bigger for strictly digital entities, especially ones that don't feel a need for speed. As we've mentioned many a time before, the signals running around your brain generally move slower than the speed of sound, often a lot slower. and it's only a millionth the speed of light. If you copied a human brain exactly, but spaced out to run at light speed, but at the human rate of consciousness, the brain would be the size of a planet. Now, you'd probably have that bundled into all sorts of nodes, but it means someone can spread their intelligence all over the planet and still maintain the normal human rate of thought without needing a single extra bit of total processing power. That's a very hard target to take out, when they might have a dozen redundancies for every node and thousands or even millions of such nodes. This doesn't even include actual backup copies of them elsewhere or even running clones. There's a million asteroids in the belt big enough to make comfortable city-states for regular humans, and they could easily have tons more entirely digital people running around in the background, potentially with their consciousnesses distributed over several light seconds. And if you don't mind going slower or adding more processing, you could potentially distribute your awareness like a gas cloud spread over entire solar systems or other solar systems. If your big goal is to survive as long as the stars or longer, you might not mind if a thought took a year, if it protected you from pretty much any conceivable attack. Helps with boredom too, one of those big threats to continued existence. That's the big one, of course. How do you kill an immortal? In a fantasy novel, they've presumably got some special weakness. You know, throw their precious ring into a volcano, or there's a magic sword that can kill them. We don't get those in the real world, but hypothetically, you could get them with some virus that corrupted them and their copies. They presumably need access to those, but they might have disconnected backups or ones that will read only in someone else's vault as a fallback. You could go get all those storage repositories, but you need to know where they all are. You need to be able to blow them up. You need to be able to deal with the issue that other people are probably on those too. And you need to get them all at once or inside the time window light lag provides, or they'll just copy elsewhere. And all the security for this is to protect human lives, many human lives. So odds are you are going up against tons of the best minds around who designed those security systems. Barring such options, how can you kill an immortal? The easiest way is to get them to kill themselves. There's more to that than simple suicide, but we can start there. People probably do not want copies of their mind floating around that they don't know about or don't have access to. That is your privacy, after all. So having some backup you've removed from your own memories triggered to go off if you committed suicide would seem a special level of paranoia. And you can't update it all the time, or you would need to know about it or otherwise leave evidence it exists. So you could be losing years or decades of memory. Excluding that is probably uncommon or impractical. A person should be able to kill themselves, and it is unlikely any court would rule that any decision you made in the past, like a clause preventing you from wiping your backups, was something you could not invalidate. Maybe, though, you might have some weird cases of divergent multiple persons with the same original mind, where one tried to delete the original backups and got refused. Now, it sounds kind of absurd that you could talk someone into killing themselves without overt mind control, but two notes on that. First, while I always say I can't imagine ever getting bored with life to the point of wanting to end it, that is the most common rebuttal to life extension I tend to hear when we discuss the topic. Folks would get bored and choose to die. I, of course, always say that's their own business and doesn't have any relevance to whether or not such tech should be developed or if other people should be allowed to use it. I also don't think most people would get bored either, but I could be wrong. Add to that, we expect psychology to keep improving, especially when we are at the brain scan and emulation level. A trained expert working on someone who was already kind of bored might be able to talk them into ending themselves. They almost have to have access to every recent backup at least of their mind, so they can delete those. You could have things in place to prevent suicide if you were worried that you might be struck by extreme but temporary depression at some point in a multi-million-year life. But you probably don't want any strong anti-suicide restraints in place either, considering you could end up being truly immortal to the point you can't even kill yourself. Your core architecture prevents you from even trying. That's how you end up a trillion-year-old, miserable entity trapped for all eternity, potentially even driven to steal resources from others to keep going after the stars are gone, because your internal mental monitors regard that as akin to starving yourself to death and are allowed to force you to eat. It is a little chilling to imagine a dark and cooling universe populated only by resource raiders cannibalizing each other. And in some ways that seems even worse if each of them is secretly grateful when they lose and can finally die. So while you might want to build in some time constraints on deleting backups, waiting periods to confirm the request and so forth, you still probably want that option. If it is there, that's one way to get an immortal, persuading them to take a nihilistic view of life, or even just convincing them that life will be exciting again with real dangers and few to no backups. Of course, at a fundamental level, if your psychology is getting that good, and so is your neuroscience, you might be able to kill them just by changing them. Fundamental life changes can have a big effect on a person, and permeate out to change their attitudes on all sorts of things. And that is without precision psychology or the ability to simply delete a given desire. For a digital entity, one can presumably be sufficiently in control to flip a switch that makes you like chocolate and hate strawberries, where before you did not like chocolate and loved those berries. You don't have to move fast either. Revenge is a dish best served cold, and you are presumably just as immortal as they are. If it takes you 1,000,000 years of subtle manipulation to effectively kill off the old persona with one so different it doesn't act the least bit the same, what do you care? Which brings us to our last point. You can use all these methods to extend your life indefinitely, but how much is that person really you? Yes, the changes are gradual, but does that really matter? In general, we also have the same concern with transhumanism. If you boost the mind up to superhuman levels, is what remains actually you, or did that person die? Not a seed the tree grew out of, but just the decaying logs of a previous tree it used for nutrients and root structure. This is one reason I can imagine for why people might skip on mental augmentation or super long lives. They just don't believe that final product would be them, because it's beyond simple gradual change, so that the final person is no more them than we are the various dirt and microorganisms that were around when the dinosaurs roamed the planet. Now you could put safeguards in to prevent such major changes, to make sure you never drifted outside the acceptable ranges of thought and behavior you wanted, have certain things hardwired as it were. Or you might use resets, effectively being like Leonard Shelby from Christopher Nolan's Memento, the reverse of Groundhog Day, where you keep repeating the same day but remember it. Here, you keep experiencing new days but forget the previous ones. Something like that could happen just from not being able to contain all your memories, not just running out of space for them, but for the indexing system you used to recall 1 billion years worth of life. Faced with options like that, a lot of folks might decide enough is enough and opt to shut down. Not from boredom, but from recognition that they just weren't the same person anymore, and either they'll archive all those old memories entirely outside their new mind, or just end it entirely. Either way, that original person is gone. That's a fairly dismal outlook on eternity, but this is our Halloween episode after all. There could be solutions too. We have hardly explored the options in detail for this problem we can't experience yet anyway, and figuring those out will give future generations something to do so they don't get bored. For mind uploading, I would expect it to become a pretty major sector of interplanetary trade, our topic for next week, simply because if it becomes normal, most folks would want a backup far from where they lived. It will also play a big role in how people approach warfare in the future too, when we revisit that topic early next year. For alerts when that and other episodes come out, make sure to subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to hit the like button and share it with others. And join in the conversation in the comments below or at our Facebook group, Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur. Until next time, thanks for watching and have a great week.
Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur. That's my man. So I'm gonna listen to one more episode of Science and Futurism, and then I probably put some beats on. So let's see. That was Digital Death. Quiet Revolution. Technologies that will change, and then the words run out. Machine Rebellion. Mass drivers. Ooh, so I'm gonna go between Quiet Revolution, Machine Rebellion. Machine Rebellion. Quiet Revolution. Let's see. Let's do this revolution shit.
Or even historical TV drama, a post more quietly, but just as surely revolutionize the way we live.
Right to the beginning.
Many technologies show up with loud proclamations of how they will change our lives, while others arrive more quietly, but just as surely revolutionize the way we live. Two men wake up at 7 in the morning on August 10th. The difference is one wakes up in the year 2017 and the other wakes up in 1717. The latter wakes up chilly to the sound of a rooster crowing from a bed of straw he shares with lots of bed bugs. Neither his nightshirt nor his bedding is terribly clean, and he splashes water on his face from a bowl to help wake up before looking outside to try to guess what the weather will be like today. He, like all his family, and most of the people he knows, is a farmer, so weather matters a lot to him. And any other news will be a long time coming, including that his brother, who lives just a couple towns away, broke his leg a few days back and passed away from an infection. He works from sunup to sundown because he has little machinery, and he would probably work longer if he had access to something better than candles to provide light. Our other man wakes up in 2017 to the sound of an alarm clock. He is not hot or cold because his home has central heating. His pajamas and bedding are quite clean because he has a washer and dryer. He is a bit groggy because he can light his home at the flick of a switch, so he often stays up later than he should. Fortunately, he has hot coffee and a hot shower to help him wake up, and he checks his email while drinking that coffee and listening to the news and weather. He already knows his brother broke his leg a few days back, even though he lives a long distance away, and of course he does not die from an infection. He's just at home bored and probably would welcome a phone call. These are two very different lives. They are separated by 3 centuries, a dozen generations, and a slew of inventions, both major and minor. Those inventions, major and minor, have altered our civilization profoundly during that time. Our topic for today, however, is not those inventions.
But this is what and even before I found this dude, like, I can't really recall exactly when or who got me thinking on the subject, but I remember having a conversation with somebody, and like, I've always been a big sci-fi fan, so Farscape was one of my favorite ones back in the day, and Lost in Space, I watched that, you know what I'm saying? My Favorite Martian, what's the one, the old shit with the dude from, but anyways, like, I always thought, like, you know, how will shit be in the future? Like, what's the future going to be like? And realistically, we can kind of predict some course that our technologies are going on right now. And this guy right here, Isaac Arthur, that's what he does. He takes all of our technology and predicts what it'll be like in the distant future, yo. But just like he explained just now, just in 300 years, what we came from, the the tech that we had 300 years ago, which really isn't a long time ago when you think about it. Like, a century's not a long time. So 300 years ago till now, and then just imagine 300 years from now. Like, what the fuck kind of shit these motherfuckers will have by then, yo? And they're already talking about manned missions to Mars, you know what I'm saying, and moon bases and shit like that already. So we're like on the edge of, you know, interplanetary travel, you know, terraforming planets, you know what I'm saying, and shit like that, yo. That shit is, in like 1,000 years from now, man, we'll be done living on another planet by then, probably. But then you look, you know, 1,000 years in the past. Well, hell, that shit crazy, because you can look back like 6,000 years and older than that. Motherfuckers still can't figure out how they built the motherfucking pyramids and shit. So it's not like mankind isn't smart as shit, yo. I can just imagine in a couple thousand years, yo, like, where the fuck this shit is going to be at, yo. But the only thing they say that we will never have is faster than light travel. You know what I'm saying? That's the one thing. So we'll have to keep everything, all of our science, inside of the realm of light speed or near light speed. But still, it'll just take, you know, time to travel different places. If we can just conquer our own solar system, yo, and, you know, maybe Mars is possibly somewhat habitable with a terraforming program, and, you know, a terraforming program may take 1,000 years or better just to even start seeing any type of real change to a whole planet, you know what I'm saying? But mining the asteroid belt and using, and this is something that Isaac believes too. He thinks that, like, building space colonies is almost easier and better than actually, you know, trying to terraform a whole different planet. If you really wanted to fucking just travel out in space somewhere, motherfuckers, like, don't, like, you can just fucking build colonies and shit. But this dude talks about all kind of shit, yo.
But rather the ones emerging nowadays that will change our lives once more, many of which get little notice in the news. Even those emerging technologies that get reported with much pomp and hype often bypass a lot of the simple yet drastic changes they will bring to how we go about our normal day. This was a topic picked by a poll of the channel supporters on Patreon, and it's a great topic, but one that was surprisingly hard to discuss. A survey of technologies that don't get talked about a lot but will change the world we live in requires introducing those technologies and explaining the potential of each. The trick is that technologies that don't get a lot of fanfare don't get it because their value and applications are not too obvious. Fundamentally, technology is about making our lives better, safer, and more convenient. To talk about the impact technology will have on our lives, we need to go deeper than just what technology does, like how a fusion reactor makes electricity cheaper and renewable, an obvious benefit, but also how it alters our day-to-day life. Cheaper electricity is awesome. An energy source that doesn't run out or cause environmental problems is awesome, but it is easy to overlook all the other benefits that come along with them. We once devoted an entire episode to just that one technology back in the early days of the channel. Today, we need to cover several such technologies. So to do this, we will walk through a day in the life of two people, Sam, who lives nowadays in the year 2017, and Hannah, who lives just a few generations from now in 2077. Sam wakes up, hits the snooze on the alarm clock, then wakes up again 5 minutes later and grumbles as he gets out of bed. He gets the coffee maker started, then heads into the bathroom to shower, shave, and brush his teeth. Unlike most of his ancestors, he has all of his teeth, though some are fillings or caps. He drinks coffee and has a bowl of cereal, checks the news, dresses, and plots out his day. So Sam gets in his car, and unlike his grandfather, he can remotely start the car before heading out, so the vehicle is all warmed up when he gets in. He stops for gas before getting on the freeway, and spends maybe 5 minutes pumping it. He does not need to speak to anyone though. It is 2017, not 1987, so he just slips his debit card into the machine rather than going inside to wait in line for a cashier. He doesn't need to grab another coffee either, because large thermos cups are cheap and easily available. When he gets back in the car, he has a phone message from his boss saying not to come home to the office. Everyone is going to a meeting hall, and here is the address. Sam's company makes software, and he is going to go demo that software this morning to a company in that area. He's got it on his laptop and keeps a projector in the trunk. They'll tweak the usual presentation and email it to him with some notes on the prospective customer. He doesn't recognize the address, but that is what GPS is for. So he gets on the road and almost reels in someone while trying to read those notes, but arrives at his destination and gives the presentation. Thankfully, they seem happy with the product. He doesn't know the area well, but searches the internet for a good restaurant for lunch, then heads back to the office, gives his boss a report on how it went, and they spend some time strategizing how to close the deal. It's been a bit of a stressful day, so he goes and gets a drink after work. Just one though, because he needs to drive. He then goes to the grocery store, and thankfully, he remembered to put his list on his phone so he doesn't forget anything. He heads home, microwaves some dinner, and settles in to watch some TV and play a video game to finish unwinding. His son Ted calls from college, and they chat for a while. Then Sam heads off to bed. That was a day in life of Sam. Sam's day is a fairly normal one for modern times. Different from a generation ago in many ways, but similar in many others. Different from the one his son Ted will live, but likely similar in many ways too. It is worth noting that while Sam has access to virtually all the knowledge of humanity, he can't particularly learn it faster than someone with access to a classic library could. He and his son away at school can access just about any information near instantaneously, but other than it being easier to find visual examples beyond text in a diagram, how he intakes new information has not changed much over previous generations, even if his mode of access has. Okay, 60 years later, Hannah wakes up, but she is not groggy, so she does not hit the snooze button on her alarm clock, because she doesn't actually have one. Unlike her grandfather Sam or her dad Ted, she does not own a smartphone either. She has a supercomputer in her wristwatch, and some thin contact lenses, and a tiny implanted speaker by her ear that feed her information instead. Lots of her friends have no wristwatch or contact lenses either, just stuff wired into their brains more directly, but she's a bit of a traditionalist. She's not groggy because every day she eats a couple of capsules, the same way we might take a multivitamin or allergy medicine. They are gel capsules that dissolve into lots of tiny pills, which in turn can be sent a signal to release their contents, or simply let them pass through the system unused. Some of those micropills contain things like melatonin to help her get to sleep, or others to help her wake up. There's no alarm clock on the nightstand next to her bed. Instead, a little while before she wakes up, those medications get triggered to help her transition comfortably to wakefulness, and her ear speaker starts talking or playing music. The lights in the room turn on too, and grow brighter. She doesn't start the coffee maker because all the smart electronic shadows that follow her around made a good guess she'd want some, and some toast, and delivered those to her nightstand instead. She does not brush her teeth in favor of putting in something like a mouth guard that she just bites down on, and it goes to work brushing and flossing in a very precise and guided way, then relays that data to her dentist's computer, which analyzes and collates it to see if she needs an appointment. She knows what cavities and fillings are, because she heard about them in a history class, along with smallpox. Normally, Hannah would not actually go into work, because she mostly works from home. She does need to go in sometimes, though, so she does find it worth the cost to have a car rather than just summon an automated taxi. She tells her vehicle to start while getting dressed, and feels a little chilly as she steps outside. But her clothing is smart too, with lots of small machinery and micro-sized solar panels, and batteries and wireless energy receivers in it, so it instantly starts warming her up on her walk to the car, which is short because it drives itself up to her doorstep and opens the door for her. She tells it to take her to walk, and she sips some coffee and reviews her notes and correspondence while it drives. She walks through lunch and orders whatever she likes for drone delivery. She doesn't even know where she ordered it from, or that it came from 2 different places that seamlessly coordinated their delivery to be simultaneous. After work, she goes to a pub and decides to stick around for a second drink because she isn't driving and does not need to go to the grocery store. She just gets a note from her smart house requesting permission to buy things she's low on and asking if she wants anything else. She scans the list, adds some ice cream to it, and says yes, all the while chatting with a random stranger at the bar. Neither of them ever gave their names, since they are just used to seeing someone's name pop up in their vision whenever they look at a person's face, and their various electronic shadows detect the mental equivalent of curiosity. She heads home and talks to her dad Ted along the way. He appears to be sitting in the car with her, with every sight and sound seeming to come from someone physically there, though her preferences are set to always give a certain halo and translucency to such folks so she doesn't forget they aren't actually present. He's entirely digital though. Her dad Ted is not there and not sitting, and from his perspective, his daughter is walking alongside him while he plays golf half a planet away. He remembers when the software for this was a lot less seamless and would show a video window of their face, and when you used to have to remember to take your phone with you and had to mess around trying to get charging cables into ports. He hasn't plugged anything in for a long time, and Hannah doesn't even remember doing so, because for her whole life, everything has just been wireless. Energy is transmitted to small devices by magnetic induction, or runs off stored energy in tiny, high-energy density batteries that charge very quickly, and gets power off micro-sized solar panels in one's clothing, or by leeching a little energy off every swing of the arm or leg. She doesn't think about it much, but often it's a little harder for her to move an arm or leg when her electronic shadows think she needs some exercise, and devote that extra energy into the grid, or rent some of the processors in her clothes or braces out for cloud processing, signal boosting, and so on. Hannah works for the same software firm her father and grandfather did, but she never carries any equipment around for presentations, because she rarely does them in person, and when she does, she could just grab the files off the cloud and share them right to her audience. And the interface is so smooth and mostly thought or gesture controlled that she can shuffle through dozens of charts or images in real time and send them, or even make new ones as needed. Indeed, her audience can usually alter parameters of a given chart without even having to ask her. They just say they want the chart they're seeing projected over 5 years, not 3, as she showed them, and it does. When she gets home, she has dinner with her son, who is off at college, but is actually in the house in the flesh right now, because he just attends lectures by watching them, and he asks his professors questions by calling during office hours, which are all day, every day, because dozens of professors around the planet nominally teach that course, and his study group for doing homework is likewise spread all over the planet. An individual course might be taught by many different people, and he just finds the lecturer whose style he prefers and watches those. But it's not live, so he needs someone else to ask questions. Hannah doesn't ask him about his grades because he doesn't get them. He finishes a class when he knows the material, be it a day or 2 years, and he never takes tests either because the folks who designed the course also designed tens of thousands of questions or other progress monitors, and those just get injected from time to time in the course. When he's nailing them 9 times out of 10, it moves on to more advanced stuff, or tells him he has proficiency, and that gets recorded in his file. Hannah does not need a second mortgage on her house to pay for his tuition and lodging, because paying a couple dozen different professors to prepare an instructional segment on a topic everyone around the planet can pick and choose from is a lot cheaper and more cost and time effective than paying one professor to stand in a room repeating the same lecture once a semester to students that may or may not be receptive to his presentation style, or have to miss a class and fall behind. There is no class to fall behind on, just subjects, and the ability to assess with solid accuracy how knowledgeable an individual person is at any time on that subject. So Hannah doesn't have much trouble falling asleep because she isn't too stressed out by life, and her personal health model can send in a signal to some of the pills left in her system to dissolve or tell her how much of something to take if she needs a hand getting to sleep. What is interesting about Sam and Hannah's lives is that they both live in a pretty automated and high-tech civilization. We spend a lot of time on this channel talking about futures in Hannah's era, or even centuries further ahead, and we tend to focus on big things. New spaceships, new energy sources, giant constructs we could build around our own star, or other stars and the ships that will get you there. Not today though. For today it does not matter that Ted was actually playing golf in a rotating habitat orbiting the Earth, complaining about how the spin throws off his normal swing. We care that his golf partner was actually lying down at home on his bed, playing with him in virtual reality, and that he, Ted, and Hannah were thousands of kilometers apart, but all felt like they were in the same environment chatting, even though they were not in the same place and quite possibly all saw different environments. We don't care that they have rocket ships with big fusion-powered drives that can get to Mars in a week. We care about them having cars they can sleep in, fully relaxed in the knowledge that it could drive through a blizzard without a risk of accident, and that if one did somehow happen, a dozen safety systems would pop on deploying airbags and restraints before the vehicle even hit the target, and that if somehow even that wasn't enough, an automated ambulance would be on the scene in moments with robots controlled by experts hundreds of kilometers away piloting them, and already knowing from the vehicle's monitors exactly what happened and where all the injuries were and how severe. We also don't particularly care that Hannah's son can do classes online. We already have ever-improving technology allowing that. We care about the automated, interactive aspects of that, something called affective computing, or computers and systems that can recognize, interpret, process, or simulate human body language and effects. Fundamentally, it is this sort of technology that holds the strongest potential to revolutionize our lives. Sure, a student can watch a recorded lecture and pick from several variations of it by other people covering that same topic, just as you can do now on YouTube, for instance. But it is a big game changer when the system can actually recognize that you are confused or distracted and act accordingly by simply bringing up a different or expanded presentation. One that can recognize what sort of voice tones and manner or accent you respond better to and suggest speakers based on that. It can even real-time alter theirs, or even perform text-to-speech functions that don't pronounce each word mechanically, but can simulate it like a normal person would say it, and possibly even produce a simulated speaker who doesn't trip all your mental flags as inhuman and disturbing. The uncanny valley, our tendency to respond more negatively to things which seem closer to human than further away, is a big hurdle to making such simulations. But if you can get past it, you open the door for books that don't just get read out loud by some cold, disjointed voice, but can be real-time performed like a TV show or interactive virtual environment without needing actors. It's a lot easier to learn the history of the world when instead of a book or lecture or even historical TV drama, a person can land in that environment where the bits they find boring can be seamlessly detected and altered, so they remain focused on the important knowledge while enjoying themselves. It's nice to have a test that doesn't need to have questions checking your reading comprehension, because it already knows what that was from monitoring you while you read. And even nicer if most text can adapt as you are reading it to rephrase the information or question to better communicate to you as an individual. It's like the automatic translator that doesn't just hear what someone said in another language and translate it word for word, but instead can convert all the idioms and expressions into another language and its own idioms and expressions. It will be even cooler if one day we can just download knowledge and skills into your head, like in the film The Matrix, where they upload for a few seconds, and suddenly that person knows martial arts.
I know Kung Fu.
In the absence of that, while we can only use our eyes and ears to input data, which are limited to their format and bandwidth, being able to maximize those by tailoring the input to the individual could massively boost how well and quickly people acquire knowledge and skills. Nothing would more powerfully alter our day-to-day life than the ability to absorb skills and knowledge quicker than we do now. Even many of our conveniences come from simply making a task so easy you don't have to invest any time into learning it. A civilization where everyone is a jack of all trades and an expert at a few is fundamentally different from ours. We didn't focus on cool new power production methods like fusion today. We focused on ways to conveniently get power, wireless energy transmission by magnetic induction or energy beaming, smaller and better batteries and solar panels, or harvesting energy right from the person, leeching just a little energy away from every motion, maybe even putting devices in the body that could steal a bit of energy from your own food to transmit it to devices in you or on you. I never really said how Hannah's car operates, that it is an electric vehicle ultimately powered by some big fusion reactor somewhere, because Hannah doesn't think about it. She knows the batteries in her vehicle replaced a combustion engine when batteries finally got small enough and fast charging enough to remove the inconvenience of recharging compared to refueling. But she just doesn't think about it any more than you or I spend much time thinking about our light bulbs or light switches, or what makes our refrigerator cold, even though those devices changed our lives profoundly. We are not too interested in the super powerful classic or quantum computer that could simultaneously play every human being at chess and beat them all, or even the social media network that can help you find other people in your area that enjoy chess. We are interested in the hardware and software that notices you like playing chess and can let you know the person you are talking to does as well, and likes gardening like you do, but does not share your joy of cooking or parachuting off kilometer-tall buildings. Predicting the future of technology is always a hit-and-miss game. Often, in hindsight, stuff is obvious, but can't be predicted in advance, something we call a black swan and have discussed before. Some technology and its impact is easy enough to predict, but what makes them inaccurate in most cases is all those tiny secondary advantages and changes, and those tend to focus on human desire and convenience. It's not that hard to predict faster computers, the internet, satellites, or cell phones. What's hard to predict is people using those to post a picture of what they ate for lunch. Once you do, you can imagine that a lot of restaurants will advertise online and show photos of the menu. It will seem obvious in hindsight that someone is going to make a piece of software that can look at that image and make some smart guesses about its nutritional value and calorie count. It will seem obvious in hindsight that as we get more effective computing able to monitor your reactions, your computer will get better at showing you bits of stuff on your social media newsfeed that you will enjoy, and that advertisers will be able to hit you with an ad showing a picture of a pizza with the toppings you like when you're just getting a little hungry and haven't had pizza recently, and tomorrow you'll get shown sandwiches instead. It's predictable that 3D printers and fast, cheap delivery might put a dent in classic retail shopping. It's predictable that automated vehicles, not needing expensive drivers, will make it much cheaper to deliver things or take a taxi, so that fewer people might own individual vehicles. It is less predictable that these might start including a casual chat function that notices two strangers sharing a vehicle are uncomfortable and bored and can drop an icebreaker so they can talk to each other. It's less predictable that some software company will make a fortune designing algorithms for that, which can seamlessly drop a targeted advertisement in there where the automated driver can say that it noticed you're hungry and like Italian food, and there's a great bistro just up ahead. Automated vehicles, wireless energy transmission, effective computing that can read your moods, or even mental implants that can sync directly to your thoughts are all technologies that are emerging and do tend to get a fair amount of attention in the media. However, it is very easy for us to miss a lot of those secondary applications that can quietly sneak in there to revolutionize our lives just as much as landing on the moon did, or going to Mars will. Next week, we will be starting up a new series looking at just that. We spent a lot of time recently in the Upward Bound series discussing how to get off the planet. And in the new Outward Bound series, we will be visiting some other planets and moons and talking about how to get there and what to do when you arrive. And we will start with colonizing Mars. For alerts when that and other episodes come out, make sure to subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button and share it with others. And let me give a thanks to the folks who support this channel on Patreon and selected this topic as the winner for the month. Until next time, thanks for watching and have a great week.
Yeah, I could literally listen to this dude all day. There's another one. Reusable rockets and metallic hydrogen. Life support. Unpredictability. Black Swan and OCPs. Interstellar highways. Quantum computing. The simulation hypothesis. Force fields. What? I don't know what you're talking about, Steve. Here's another good channel right here, Strange Mysteries.
Look, we all know we should save and invest, but most of us don't. So to make it
a modern iron hammer embedded in a 400 million year old rock, a mysterious gold man-made bell encased in charcoal for millions of years, hundreds of small spheres with tiny grooves dating back 2.8 billion years. Are these proof of past ancient advanced civilizations? It's currently believed by science that modern man came into existence about 200,000 years ago. Civilizations as we know them are only about 6,000 years old, and industrialization only started around 200 years ago. However, there have been many artifacts found throughout the years that do not even come close to fitting into this timeline. Once in a while, strange and out-of-place artifacts from the ancient past are discovered, making us wonder and question, are we really the first of our kind here on Earth? Here are the top 5 artifacts that prove ancient civilizations existed. Number 5, the London Hammer. In June 1936, husband and wife Emma and Max Hahn went on a stroll along Red Creek in London, Texas. On their walk, they saw a loose rock with a piece of wood sticking out of it. Out of curiosity, they took it home and kept it. It would be an entire decade until their son cracked it open with a chisel and hammer. Utterly stumped, they turned over the artifact to archaeologists who were puzzled by the find. What made the hammer so unique? Could it have been just an ordinary 19th century hammer a worker abandoned and was somehow encased in a rock? During their study, they found that the rock encasing the hammer dates as far back as 400 million years old, belonging to the Ordovician era. However, others have proposed it belongs to the Cretaceous era, about 150 million years old. Regardless, it's a very old artifact. Closely examined, the iron head is 5 inches long with a 1-inch diameter, making it likely that it was used for soft metal or finer work instead of large projects. The head portion is made from 96.6% iron, far too pure than what nature could produce without the help of technology. However, the real kicker is that the iron itself is said to be 500 million years old. It's so old that a portion of the handle has even started transforming into coal. Nobody can explain how this happened. There are educated guesses, including one stating that highly soluble minerals already in the limestone must have created a concentration around the item. This then caused it to seem as old as the minerals dated itself. However, that is unlikely and doesn't explain the handle turning to coal, which takes a minimum 30 million years to form. No one has been able to confirm the origins of the London hammer, and so to this day, it remains a strong contender for proof of an intelligent ancient past. Number 4, the unexplained stone doll. Drilling for artesian water is not the first thing you think of when hunting for proof of advanced ancient cultures. But somehow, one mundane drilling in 1889 turned up something that might prove just that. When workers reached a depth of about 300 feet with their drill, M.A. Kurtz, one of the founders for the drilling company, was at the end of the sand pump running his hands through the contents spat out by the machine. His hand caught on something solid. Unsure of what it was, he rinsed it near the standing water and, to his surprise, discovered a tiny stone doll. Measuring about 1.5 inches, the tiny doll was made from half clay and half quartz. Professor Albert A. Wright from the Oberlin College studied it carefully and concluded it wasn't a child's toy, but the work of a real artist. Despite being battered, the proportions and characteristics are there. It has a bulbous head with clear marks for the eyes and mouth, short, thick arms, as well as broad shoulders and legs, one of which is broken off. Markings around the body indicate it might have had jewelry or something attached to it at one point. The doll was also examined by other scientists and found it to be made from the same clay that came up with it during the drilling at 300 plus feet. To this day, no one knows how the stone doll got there. Was it made by an ancient lost culture? What do you think? Number 3, the strange man-made bell. What makes this next artifact so strange is that it was supposedly found buried inside a piece of coal. Coal is a special byproduct formed from decaying matter. What makes it unique is that it takes anywhere between 30 to 300 million years to form. Hence, when an unusual metallic object is found inside coal, it forces a lot of questions. One day in West Virginia in 1944, Newton Anderson, a 10-year-old boy, was asked to feed coal in their basement furnace. Taking a full shovel and walking towards the furnace, he wobbled and a huge coal chunk fell on the floor. The chunk broke open to reveal a small protruding metal on one of the pieces. Anderson would then take the coal and break it further to reveal a slender brass bell handle. What makes this puzzling is that the bituminous coal found near Anderson's home is estimated to be 300 million years old. How could a brass metal bell exist inside a 300 million year old piece of coal? What's more, modern experts tracked down the same mine and discovered that the same coal was found underground at depths of 100 feet. This blows away arguments that the modern-looking bell somehow fell and found its way into the coal. The bell itself is designed with similarities to the Hindu deity Garuda and the Babylonian demon Pazuzu. The narrow face, the wings, and kneeling posture provide telltale signs. Is it possible for the bell to be part of an ancient pagan civilization? Or is it a far more modern construction? One thing is for sure, the bell still rings perfectly when you sound it. Perhaps it won't reveal its secrets, but it is a beautiful piece whose possibilities of origins could be truly amazing. Number 2, the Koso artifact. People have called it the world's oldest spark plug, while skeptics have dismissed it as a geological anomaly. There is no doubt, however, that the Koso artifact is a complete mystery. In 1961, 3 rock hunters were looking for geodes in California's Koso Mountains to use for their gift and gem shop. Geodes are hollow rocks with mineral crystals like amethyst inside. Back at the shop, Mike Mansell, one of the hikers, placed a simple rock under a diamond saw to cut it open. It cut in half, but only after damaging a practically brand new diamond saw. Hoping to find crystals inside, he instead discovered something else. Inside the geo was what looked like a porcelain cylinder surrounding a shiny metal rod. Initial tests done on the geode showed it as more than 500,000 years old, hundreds and thousands of years before any advanced civilization supposedly showed up on Earth. What's even more fascinating is the X-rays revealed something unexpected. It showed the upper part of the item had a tiny spring or a small helix. The other half showed a piece of metal, likely copper, serving as a cover to the porcelain cylinder. The design and construction hinted it was more than just a piece of machinery, but instead an actual electrical instrument. Comparisons were made and many people noted its resemblance to a modern spark plug. Does this prove that ancient civilizations existed? Does this suggest our idea of human evolution and ancient technology might be wrong? Whatever the Koso artifact was, it's too late to find out now. To date, no one knows where it is, and none of the 3 original hikers can be found. Number 1. The grooved spheres. Our final artifact is one that has been around the longest. Considered to be 2.8 billion years old, miners at the Wonderstone silver mine in South Africa have been finding these spheres from deep rock for over 3 decades. The majority of these are described to be in a spheroid shape, with some featuring 3 parallel grooves perfectly running at its equator. To date, over 200 of these have been found. Geologists J.R. McIver and Andres Bischoff examined several pieces of these spheroid artifacts in 1979. These spheres have a distinct flattened globe shape. They measure between 1 and 4 inches in diameter and have a metallic texture on the outside. As for their color, some have a steel blue with a reddish shade, and others have white flecks embedded on the coat. Some people propose they could have come from a meteorite, but the spheres were partly made from nickel, which isn't present in meteors. Other spheres have a thin shell, and when broken, they contain a mysterious spongy material that disintegrates upon contact with air. Some of these stones are considered to be perfectly balanced, and they can rotate for a long time when spun. It is extremely unlikely that these spheres form naturally, if not impossible. So how do we explain them being almost 3 billion years old? Either humans created them long ago, or they are from another, perhaps extraterrestrial being, and that is something awesome to consider. So there are 5 artifacts that prove ancient civilizations existed well before our history books tell us. Perhaps there have been many cycles of human growth and destruction over the past billion years, an idea so big that it's hard for us to fathom, and so we dismiss it as a possibility. What do you think? Let us know in the comments below, and if you liked the video, please subscribe, as we'll be sharing new content every week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week, where we'll be looking at some of the most frightening real ghosts ever caught on tape, so you don't want to miss that.
I ain't never heard about those spheres before. That shit is crazy. But he didn't attribute anything else to aliens until he got to South Africa. Oh, look at these spheres from South Africa. Man, it may have been aliens. Why didn't you say that about none of the other stuff? Like the French hammer. Why didn't aliens use the hammer in France?
New at 6, only 5% of the country's 200 million drivers actually fight their traffic.
Distant evidence of an advanced civilization. The search for extraterrestrial intelligence seems to focus on boring, unintelligible signals resulting from some emotionally unstable star guffing off for no good reason. Optical signals, gamma rays, radio signals. These can all be produced by natural phenomena, making it almost impossible to find any genuine alien booty calls amongst all the noise. However, there are some more spectacular ways in which a highly intelligent race can make themselves known. And in many cases, if we were to detect them, there could be no doubt we had discovered distant evidence of an advanced civilization. Number 3, cosmic footprints. It doesn't matter if you're tracking deer, humans, aliens, or a discount cheeseburger at 2 in the morning. The best way to hunt something is to look for signs of its existence and follow them. This is much easier when you're in your target's natural environment, because tracks, nests, and droppings are easy to follow, as anyone who's tried to find my drunk grandpa on a Sunday afternoon would no doubt testify. However, while this method would be viable on worlds within our solar system, it's not so easy to locate footprints in dung when the planet you're looking at is many light years away. So if we suspect that a distant planet is in some way alive, what evidence might it give off that we can detect? What do we know for sure about this world? Well, we know it exists because we can see it using light. And this is all we need to make an educated guess as to the biospheric status of a faraway exoplanet. Using spectrography, which involves the separation of light into the frequency spectrum, scientists can determine the probable makeup of a planet's atmosphere based on how light reflects from it. Distant observers of our world would know that our atmosphere contains enough oxygen to sustain life. So if we spot somewhere with a similar level of delicious O2, the same assumption is considered reasonable. But what about advanced life? Can we detect civilizations technologically similar or superior to humanity using spectrography? Indeed, we can. The detection of unnaturally high levels of atmospheric carbon dioxide may indicate the presence of an industrial society. Alternatively, a rapidly changing atmosphere could point to an act of terraforming taking place, meaning we've stumbled upon a race far more advanced than we are at present. But the most chilling discovery mankind could make would not be a world inhabited by superior beings, but a world once inhabited by superior beings, which is now entirely lifeless. Number 2, the signs of extinction. When an advanced civilization burns itself out, it will do so with a bang, quite literally in most cases. We humans think we're pretty good at destroying each other. But imagine how much more explodey everything will get in 1,000 years' time. As our technology progresses, our violent actions become larger and more consequential. And the further we progress, the more likely it becomes that our self-destructive efforts will be noticed from afar. You remember those manga-causing apocalypse gifts the USA dropped on Japan back in the 40s? If a distant civilization were to let off enough of these, such an act would release detectable and traceable gamma-ray bursts. These bursts would be noticeably weaker than those given off by pulsars, black holes, and supernovae. And if we follow them back...
Did he just say dropping the atom bombs is what caused them to start making anime? Disturbing but very interesting theory. Very disturbing, but very interesting.
To the planet they bursts, Calypse gifts the more consequential. And the further we progress, the more likely it becomes that our self-destructive efforts will be noticed from afar. You remember those manga-causing apocalypse gifts the USA dropped on Japan back in the 40s? If a distant civilization were to let off enough of these, such an act would release detectable and traceable gamma-ray bursts. These bursts would be noticeably weaker than those given off by pulsars, black holes, and supernovae. And if we follow them back to the planet they came from, we could confirm the presence of an extinct, self-annihilated civilization by searching for atmospheric bright spots indicated by beta-emitting decay particles. This is just one of the ideas these researchers from the UK and US have come up with as the basis for a brand new form of alien hunting. Adam Stevens, Duncan Forgan, and Jack O'Malley have begun an initiative called the Search for Extinct Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And they believe, as well as piping hot fallout, an intelligent race might indicate its self-inflicted demise via the release of biological agents, which we could detect by looking for methanethiol or ethane in the atmosphere. Devastating climate change and pollution are also detectable from a distance, with some chlorofluorocarbon particles, or CFCs, lingering on for 100,000 years after their expulsion. Then there's the dreaded gray goo scenario, where nanobots break free of human control and reduce their home planet into fun dust. That's actually rather helpful of the nanobots to do such a thing, since the mass ejection of dust might be observable from Earth within the next few generations of telescopes. Of course, the most obvious sign of a civilization's demise would be the obliteration of an entire planet. And when things are escalated towards this end of the scale, you know you're dealing with some seriously baller alien bros. Number 1. Playing with the stars. Terraforming a planet is one thing, but if a civilization is capable of manipulating the very stars themselves, this indicates the presence of a highly advanced race whose actions will be noticeable from thousands of light years away. Obviously, given the distances involved, these events would have taken place hundreds or thousands of years ago, depending on how far away they are. Nevertheless, if we were to detect alterations to star systems within our own galactic backyard, this would be a most jarring observation indeed. The Dyson Sphere is the most frequently cited example of how we might discover a distant advanced race, since this theoretical project involves the envelopment of a star within a humongous artificial casing. Such a device would capture the entirety of a star's energy output, and it'd be hard to miss the unnatural dimming caused by its gradual construction. This event would indicate the presence of a Type II Kardashev civilization, which is where humanity is predicted to be within a few thousand years. After 100,000 to 1,000,000 years of development, mankind might gain the power of a Type III civilization, and an equivalent alien society could display their level of sophistication by moving whole stars to suit their needs. These acts may sound incredible, but they are considered plausible, ultra-long-term goals for humanity, or indeed any race, should it survive long enough. In the meantime, there are a few other signs we might be able to spot of an advanced alien civilization lurking out there in the cosmos. Large, planet-encompassing megastructures would be the precursors to Dyson spheres, as would large off-world habitats, thousands of kilometers wide. These objects would be observed when they pass in front of their respective stars, with their distinctive, unnatural shape helping us identify them as creations of an advanced people. It's also possible that distant, advanced aliens might signal their existence, as they do in the movies, through a fleet of spaceships. If we humans are within half a century of sending out light-sail nanoprobes to Alpha Centauri, older civilizations might have done the same many millennia before us. And if their larger, manned spaceships are powered by antimatter, the reaction produced would be detectable from around 300 light years away. Of course, it is not certain that every civilization out there is more advanced than us. In fact, since we are believed to be one of the earliest life forms in the universe, given its predicted lifespan, it seems more likely we will give off such signals to more primitive, less developed civilizations sometime in the future. So when we do eventually stumble across our backwards cousins of the cosmos, how might we detect them? And how should we conduct ourselves? We're going to explore this in our bonus video, The Search for Primitive Aliens, which you can watch on our Patreon page at patreon.com/strange mysteries. For a $2 a month pledge, which you can cancel at any time, You'll get to watch this and all of our bonus content, which goes deeper and darker into every topic than YouTube allows. If you don't want to donate, then bullshit. We know you wanted more. Strange Mysteries on YouTube and our Patreon bonus videos weren't enough to quench your search for truth, to give you that sense of awe and wonder again, to go past what you thought was the end, to give you the answers you seek, but which only lead to more questions. That's why we just upped the stakes. Chemicals of reality. Reality, consciousness, brains. What else is there? Ask yourself that question. Perhaps that's all there really is, but perhaps everything else is found within a place where these ideas, these things, overlap. Some thing, some place that is undefinable. To many people, altering certain chemicals in their brains produces what they would simply call hallucinations. In fact, what we're going to discuss specifically used to be called the businessman's trip, as one could enjoy it. Come down and put your pants back on in the time it takes to eat lunch. It wasn't taken seriously, well, unless, of course, you started digging. And some people, including us, did. Already, though, to many people, this chemical is special amongst others. Very special. To them, it represents something more meaningful and incredible, as if it's the gateway to the next level of consciousness. The ticket to a higher reality barely explored by most humans. It is the entry point to a new reality, visited by only a select few, whose minds have become enlightened through the use of this exotic substance. For this reason, it's commonly referred to as the spirit molecule. But is its reputation as a mystical mind-opener deserved? Or is it, and everything it represents, just a load of bullshit? We look at, investigate, and dive deeply into nearly all available research regarding this question from nearly every angle feasible. And in the course of doing so, stumble upon unexplainable patterns, correlations, and neurological evidence for a reality existing beyond this one. Watch this hour-long Strange Mysteries premium video, Chemicals of Reality, as well as many more to come by becoming an elite premium member of our Patreon at patreon.com/Strange Mysteries.
Right now, you guys are watching the motherfucking GOAT. What? Motherfucking GOAT, bitch. This is that was Strange Mysteries. Yeah, Strange Mysteries is fucking good as shit, yo.
New at 6, only 5% of the country's 200 million drivers actually fight their traffic.
Is there life inside black holes? Ask the average layman how a black hole works, and they'll talk about a terrifying object which sucks in and destroys anything that gets close. Or, if they have a penchant for the dramatic, they might describe it as an endless void from whence no matter may emerge. But what's the truth? And could anything possibly exist within a black hole's cosmic clutches? Is there life inside black holes? Number 4. Black hole basics. To find out if life could exist inside a black hole, let's give you a quick rundown of how these universal garbage disposals work. A black hole is a region of space which possesses immense gravitational force. This force is generated by a large amount of matter which has been compressed into a tiny space, which often occurs because of the collapse of a star. Our entire galaxy revolves around a supermassive black hole which lies at the center of the Milky Way, with planets and stars able to orbit these objects safely without being sucked in, unless they cross the event horizon. The event horizon describes the boundary surrounding a black hole, beyond which light and radiation cannot escape. It is the literal definition of once you go black, you never go back.
What the fuck?
Beyond the horizon, at the center, you'll find the gravitational singularity of once you go black, you never go back. Beyond which, objects safely without being sucked in, unless they cross the event horizon. The event horizon describes the boundary surrounding a black hole, beyond which light and radiation cannot escape. It is the literal definition of once you go black, you never go back.
God
Beyond the
damn.
horizon, at the center, you'll find the gravitational singularity.
How did he work that phrase into a science lecture? This motherfucker is stupid. Once you go black, you never go back. That motherfucker crazy.
A place where the concepts of space and time cease to have meaning. The laws of physics as we understand them do not operate at the singularity because gravity and density are both infinite, and space-time becomes curved to an infinite degree. Unfortunately, we cannot see the singularity of a black hole because it is hidden behind its event horizon. But if we could see past it, one Russian cosmologist believes we'd find something very interesting indeed. Vyacheslav Dukashev is a physicist and the author of the 2011 paper, Is There Life Inside Black Holes? In his study, Professor Dukashev outlines his theory that life may exist within supermassive black holes, like the one at the center of our galaxy. Scientists have discovered supermassive black holes at the center of almost every large galaxy we've observed so far. So if Professor Dukashev is right, life may be abundant across the universe, but remain forever trapped inside these giant cosmic vacuum cleaners. But how could anything possibly survive within such a hostile environment? Dukashev's theory is based on earlier work which concluded that subatomic particles, like photons, can survive in bizarre spiral orbits within certain regions inside a black hole. Dukashev is an expert in the study of photon dynamics and orbits, and he believes that such orbits would only be possible once the objects cross the event horizon, reaching an area known as the Cauchy horizon. The Cauchy horizon is where time and space get themselves together and start acting normal again. It's like they've spent the previous night getting wasted, and they've suddenly got a test to prepare for. Within the Cauchy horizon of a charged, rotating black hole, Dukashev claims that the space-time conditions exist to facilitate the stable periodic orbits of photons and particles. In a non-charged, non-rotating black hole, only particles which are sufficiently charged will enjoy a stable periodic orbit. And if particles can exist within the Cauchy region under certain conditions, then so can larger objects, like planets. Number 2. Black hole worlds. If you lived on a planet inside a black hole, what would it feel like? Dukoshev has calculated that such a planet would be brilliantly illuminated by the singularity which it orbits, and lit up even further by the massive amount of photons trapped in the same rotation. This world would experience perpetual daytime, which means no nightmares, no night terrors, no nightman to fight the dayman, and no night crawlers either. What a shame. As you can see from this graphic, the planet would also enjoy a pretty funky orbit around the singularity. Good luck trying to figure out your birthday. Your calendar would basically be a pile of spaghetti. Anything which exists on this planet would also have to deal with powerful tidal forces, as well as huge energy densities caused by trapped photons. I assume this means you'd be able to catch some sweet waves and never need to charge your iPhone. But this assumption is not based on any actual scientific fact. Unlike Dukoshev's assertion that a planet inside a black hole would be subjected to some pretty messed up causality violations. Causality is the basic idea that entities cause actions and that an entity cannot act in contradiction to its nature. This is why you can't change the past. The past has already happened. You made out with your cousin at that wedding. What? And now you're going to have to deal with it.
What?
But inside a black hole, the conditions may be ripe for causality violations to occur, with the rules of space-time ceasing to apply to any organisms within. That means you could end up tongue-wrestling a family member for the rest of eternity before you ever imagined yourself doing it. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but this is the kind of life I assume might exist inside a black hole. However, Professor Dukoshev has a different idea. Super aliens. Number 1. Who lives there? Advanced civilizations may live safely inside the black hole without being visible from the outside. This is the opinion of Professor Dukoshev, who believes a planet inside a black hole could potentially support a complex chemistry rich enough to allow life to evolve. And not just any old life, but super fancy, advanced, intelligent life. Dukoshev estimates that civilizations of the third Kardashev type would be the most likely to exist within a supermassive black hole. This level of advancement will take humans an estimated 100,000 to 1 million years to reach, since it describes a race so powerful they can colonize the galaxy, traverse interstellar space, and even manipulate the stars themselves, extracting their energy as if they were mere batteries. Others have contended that a Kardashev 4 civilization would be more likely to live inside a black hole, with these A-grade cosmic students able to travel between galaxies, change the structure of space-time, and even slow down the process of entropy. The power estimated to achieve such things is in the order of billions of trillions of suns. And these life forms may even have transcended physical boundaries to exist as incorporeal beings. As you might have guessed, we are some way from being able to achieve this. How or why such civilizations would come to exist inside a black hole, Dukoshev does not say. They may have formed within it, or they may have found a way to travel past the event horizon without being smushed into spaghetti, like a black hole calendar. Either way, these civilizations would live in safety behind the cloak of a supermassive black hole's event horizon, with these galactic nuclei potentially acting as safe havens for sufficiently advanced species. Maybe, once civilizations reach a certain level of power, they realize they are too dangerous to exist in the ordinary universe. So they banish themselves to the Cauchy horizon to spare the lives of lesser beings. Or perhaps the weather is just nicer in there. It's a shame, we'll likely never know. It may prove impossible to see beyond the event horizon of a black hole. So if any life has sprung up inside one, it could be permanently off limits to anything outside. This means that theories like Professor Dukoshev's may remain untestable for eternity. But if we could somehow prove that life is possible inside a black hole in another way, The sheer number of supermassive black holes out there means that some may be populated. And if some have planets, they might have stars. And if they can have stars, why not universes? Which begs the question, might our universe exist within a gargantuan black hole? We're going to explore this in our bonus video, Do We Exist Within a Black Hole? Which you can watch in our Patreon page at patreon.com/Strange Mysteries. For a $2 a month pledge, which you can cancel at any time, you'll get to watch this and all of our bonus content, which goes deeper and darker into every topic than YouTube allows. If you don't want to donate, then that's fine.
Bullshit. We know you wanted more. Strange Mysteries on YouTube and our Patreon bonus videos weren't enough to quench your search for truth, to give you that sense of awe and wonder again, to go past what you thought was the end, to give you the answers you seek, but which only lead to more questions. That's why we just upped the stakes. Chemicals of reality. Reality, consciousness, brains. What else is there? Ask yourself that question. Perhaps.
Alright, an hour and a half. I'm gonna get out of here for a little while, guys. I'm hungry. I'm about to go eat something real quick. Alright, guys. Peace till next time. No, not that.